Welcome to the Sacred Window podcast. My name is Christine Devlinek. The Sacred Window refers to the tender, magical, and remarkable weeks following the birth of a baby. A birth giver is forever changed. Recognizing that this time is too often overlooked and misunderstood in our modern culture, we're setting out to be part of a voice for change and growth. We're growing awareness and broadening the reach of conscious postpartum care. Our podcast features friends and colleagues as interviewers. We're a loving community united by a common passion to change the paradigm of postpartum care to one that honors women, birth givers, babies, and families. We're glad you're here.
And I will never be the same again.
This podcast is an interview between myself, Alysha Higgins. I am a mother of two, a home birth mama, a postpartum care provider, a dancer, and a bodywork and lomi practitioner. And I am interviewing Debrah Lewis. Debrah Lewis is from Trinidad, which is the Twin Island Republic, which is the southernmost island of the Caribbean. And she has been a nurse since 1978 and a midwife since 1984. She's the founder of Mamatoto Birth Center in Trinidad and Tobago, the only birth center. She founded it and continues to work as a midwife through that organization. Since receiving a major in maternal child health from Columbia University, she worked in a variety of settings in New York as a public and private practice midwife and affiliated clinical faculty member, as well as doing volunteer work in Africa. She was a founder and past president of the Association of Midwives and is a member of the Nursing Council. She's a founder of the Caribbean Regional Midwives Association and is on the board of the Northwest Regional Health Authority. Debbie was elected as the vice president of the International Confederation of Midwives for 3 years and is currently co-chair of the ICM Scientific Program Planning Committee. Thank you, Debbie, for speaking with us today.
I just have a list of questions here, and I might type some stuff down, but I'm recording it, so I'll just love to listen and whatever you have to share. Thank you so much. Again, I'm really excited. Okay, so how long have you been a midwife?
37 years. I did my midwifery training in New York and have been in Trinidad for 31 years working as a midwife.
Right, and that's awesome. So you've served probably quite a few families. I don't know if you have the running count of that, but
I don't, unfortunately I stopped recording I think when I moved to Trinidad, I did it just for a short time and then I stopped. So I don't have a sense. I know it's probably a couple thousand because the hospital I worked in New York was pretty busy. And then I worked at sort of a birth center here in Trinidad first called Amicus. It was in Diego Martin.
Oh.
And then a couple of us got together and we opened Mamatoto, which is where I am now.
Oh, okay. So you helped open that. Awesome. And then, so Amicus in Diego, that's where my mom grew up. Where I didn't know about that. That's not like that. When was that running, or when was that a birth center? Like what years was that operating?
I think it opened in 1990, and then it closed. I don't know, maybe 2010 or so. I think I can't remember exactly, but it closed a little bit after we opened here. And we started births here in 2008. So it was sometime around then that they closed.
Okay. And so have you mainly just worked at Mamatoto, or and I guess you've worked in New York at the hospital and with birth centers, but do you also do home birth clients, or do you also have your private practice as well?
I don't anymore. I worked at Amicus, and then I had a private home birth practice. But when we opened Mamatoto, I couldn't do both. It was 5 of us that started Mamatoto, and 3 of us were still in active midwifery practice, all doing home births. But when we started Mamatoto, we gave up our home birth practice and focused on this because we couldn't do both.
Yeah.
So since then, I've only done Mamatoto.
Right. Awesome. And then, so I'm interested if you were well, I'm sure you're not the first midwife in your family, but that you know of, was it kind of something that you grew up with, or it was passed on from, your family, or how did you get into midwifery? I'm just curious.
No. There's absolutely nobody in my family in midwifery or medicine or nursing or anything at all.
Okay.
My father was in industrial relations. My mom was a housewife and then did some social thing, I don't know. But my mother was a volunteer with the Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And she would go to the hospital to, I don't know, volunteer and do whatever she did. And I would go with her as a child, and I saw the nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh, I think I'd like to do that someday. And when I finally did do nursing, I just fell in love with this field, this area of midwifery, and decided that this is what I wanted to do. And also, to be quite realistic, I thought, I didn't know where I wanted to live. I knew I didn't want to stay in New York. And I thought that it didn't matter where in the world I lived, women would be having babies. And so I would always have a job.
Yes,
And but I really initially I just really fell in love with the area. I always remember that on my nursing exam, I got like full score in this area. And they said to me, what is that? And I said, I don't know, I just love it,
Yeah.
And so then I went on to do midwifery, and that was it.
Meant to be. Nice. Okay. Well, I feel maybe somewhere down the line, way back when you had some, the mothers and the women were helping, to birth the babies. So it's right. It's down there somewhere.
Yeah, there must be something. Right. It's just that I'm not aware of, but it must be somewhere in my DNA or something.
Right. So my next question, how popular is home birth or out of hospital birth in Trinidad right now? Or, I mean, I'm sure COVID has made it even less popular, or maybe more. I don't know. What is in general? What is your take on home birth in Trinidad?
So there are not a lot of home births happening. I think for a couple of things. One is that people are no longer familiar with home births. It was something that used to be more popular many years ago, and then it became very institutionalized. And by and large, people still think you get pregnant, you go to a doctor. And sometimes when I tell people I'm a midwife, they say, really? Midwives still exist? I thought that was like some old woman in the very rural areas that, were not trained and all of that.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I'm going off on a little tangent, but in addition to that, there are a lot of midwives working in our public healthcare system, but they're not called midwives, they're called nurses.
Yeah.
So that our population doesn't identify a midwife with the person who attended them and delivered their baby in the hospital. They call them nurses.
Mhm.
We've just sort of lost that midwifery. Anyway, so back to the home birth.
No,
So
that's great.
it's not really that, yeah, it's not really that popular. The most of the home births that are being done are done because the midwifery students have to attend a minimum of 3 home births each before they can graduate. And so that's really primarily what keeps the home births going in the public healthcare system. And then outside of that, there are a couple midwives that work privately and do home births, but not a lot. Not a lot. There are not a lot of independent midwives practicing.
Yeah.
And with COVID, we've absolutely had more requests for home births. Because people are afraid of going to the hospital.
Yeah.
So if people call us, we refer them to the Midwives Association, because the Midwives Association has a list of midwives that they refer to for the home births. And so we have also had at Mamatoto a lot of inquiries as well, and clients who have chosen to come to us, because they don't want to go to the hospital. However, we are private and we have a fee.
Right.
Whereas the public healthcare, the public healthcare system is all free, right? There's no cost. So when you're competing with free, sometimes people just can't afford, or they choose, to go to the hospital still. So our numbers have been maintained. I can't say that maybe they've increased a little, but not significantly. But we definitely have got more inquiries.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are asking, well, do you have a payment plan, or am I eligible for reduced cost? Because we do have a program where you can, for a sliding scale program, but it's only so many we can accept a year, where they pay less.
Right.
But we have more people asking. And you're familiar with how the healthcare system here works, right?
Yeah, pretty much. For the most part, I did live there for a year, so I understand how it works. Yeah. And I had my my cousin, I guess. I mean, I don't know exactly how she's related to me, but she actually, as soon as I got to Trinidad, it was the first time I had been there, and I was at a funeral for her because she she was all in the papers and everything because she just had her second baby, and she was at the private hospital, and then they transferred her to the public hospital, and she ended up hemorrhaging or whatever. She died. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, I mean, it happens, right? But it was like a huge thing. And I know that I was hearing all, like, every now and again you'd hear those stories. And I was like, oh gosh, it's just really sad and scary. But when it was really exciting for me to find Mamatoto. And then now to know that there's midwives as well, because when we do move back there, and if I were ever to have more kids, who knows? I mean, it's potential, it's possible. So it's nice to know that there's still a home birth practice, at least for me, because I've just, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, that's aside. But anyways, so well, I guess you kind of are starting to answer this in terms of like the demographic that you primarily serve, in terms of, socioeconomic status and, whatever, all of the things, age, race, and everything that, what do you say, like primarily, people who have the money, unfortunately, access is a thing, it sounds like, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. But one of our core beliefs is that people should not have to make a decision simply because they can't pay us, So we really try to work with families to figure out a way for them to be able to afford it. And sometimes it's just to say free, if that's what it takes, for example, recently we had a client who had had her first 2 babies with us. And now her partner, her husband had lost his job. And she was now pregnant with the 3rd baby, and so couldn't afford to pay. And I like, there's no way in our heart we could say no. She had her first 2 babies with us, so simply because she couldn't pay, So we told her, oh, come on, and
Well,
we'll
it's like
just do
family,
it.
right? It's like family.
Yeah, yeah. Like, we couldn't say no. So we still do. And what happened is that years ago, we actually had funding because we're set up as a nonprofit.
Okay.
And so we were able to access funding. So we did have funding to support pro bono and sliding scale clients, but we no longer have that funding.
Mm-hmm.
We do some fundraising, but it's not that much. And so the numbers that we can do now are more limited,
Yeah.
but we really do try. In terms of our demographics, I had done this for a presentation last year. So what it looks like is about low 50s African, I think 20 something East Indian, and then the rest really a mix. We have quite a number of expats because it's people who are more familiar with the midwifery model, so people who have lived overseas. We've had Australian, British, because they're just more familiar with midwifery care. So we have a real mix. We have the age group with the highest, I think, was like 25 to 36 or something like that. We have had as old as 42 giving birth, who, she came to us because every time she went for a visit with her obstetrician, she would be told how high risk she is and that she probably would need a C-section and all of that. And her sister had babies with us. And so she came, and anyway, to make a long story short, she went on to have a 2nd baby with us, just fine with no complications. So we wouldn't consider age alone as a risk.
Yeah.
There would have to be other things. Yeah, but that's primarily a lot. I cannot remember the statistics. I could probably look it up and send it to you if you want. But I do think the majority are in a stable relationship. So perhaps not actually legally married, but so single, but in a committed relationship. Right. And we have had a couple of teenagers, because the teenagers for sure are pro bono, unless their families are able and willing to pay for them.
Nice. Well, yeah, and I totally understand you guys, to be able for you to live and to operate and to offer these services, you need the money. And it's unfortunate that these kind of organizations aren't given more funding. And I feel like it definitely should be that way. You know what I mean? But maybe the expats or the people that might have, more money, you can increase the price for them so that they might be able to, help
supplement the other. And there's been some expats who, after they've given birth, they have actually donated like a birth fee, the amount of a birth fee.
That's nice.
So that somebody else can have the opportunity, And then we have one couple who every year at Christmas, they give us like a 6,000 donation or so, which covers close to half of a birth package, So we have those, and people who are committed. But in terms of, and we're always looking for funding, but in the meantime, what we do is we have donation boxes in a couple of the pharmacies, and we have we're on Amazon. We get I don't know, whatever that donation, like if you order through our link, we get something through there. So we have a couple of things that do bring in something, but not as much as we did previously.
with the continued, like, you know, industrialization, like you're saying, in Trinidad, and like the westernization, how do you think new mothers are supported? So postpartum, like they just given a baby, how are they supported by the culture and the society at large? So that might be through like government support, through the medical system, through doctors, or through family. Even just how do people treat new mothers in Trinidad?
Um, yeah, sorry, go finish. You finish.
No, I'm just like, there's more to the question, more on like what, like I know there might be different traditions with different families depending on what their background is culturally, but are those still followed in terms of postpartum traditions? That's pretty much it.
Okay, so I think I think that we do not have. Okay, let me start with the system. So I think that's an area, that postpartum area is an area that we really do not do well in our traditional healthcare system, because women are discharged from the, and I'm going to just use the hospitals because that's where the bulk. So I'm not. This does not include our model at all, right?
Yeah.
So they're discharged, our main and Mamatoto.
Right.
Yeah, so they're discharged from the hospital. They go home with their new babies with no support until they go back to their health center or to their private doctor at 6 weeks, right? So the women go away, there's no contact again until they go for their 6-week visit, or maybe they go for a 1-week visit to their obstetrician, but that is totally them. And then in terms of the baby, well, if they make an appointment to go to their private pediatrician, maybe they'll have a visit. If it's the health center, which is where the majority of our women give birth, is in the public healthcare system, then nobody sees that baby again until 6 weeks. Right. So everything can happen there. You know, there's very little breastfeeding support. They are trying to the Ministry of Health has mandated all of the hospitals to become baby friendly. So they are putting in place like little support groups or referrals, and where they can get some breastfeeding support. But it really is an area where I feel the woman and the baby really need a lot of support in that immediate postpartum period, and it's not generally happening, right?
Yeah.
So I really an area that's lacking. And then in terms of the cultural things, not happening as much as it did before either, but still quite a bit, particularly in the African with their traditions and in the East Indian with their traditions. I think it is still happening because mothers and grandmothers get involved and they do what they're familiar with, you know? And as I say that, I want to also say that I find generally families as well, our whole society has kind of shifted, and sometimes families are split up. We just had somebody that gave birth, all of her family have migrated. She's the only one here, so she doesn't have immediate family. Or it's the father is from Trinidad, mother's not, so her family's not here. So she only has his family, which, you know, maybe doesn't feel quite the same as her family.
Right. Yeah.
So for several reasons, I feel as if as a society, we don't have close-knit family support as much. We still have it to an extent, but not as much as we did many years ago, you know?
Yeah.
But in the situations where they do, then yes, in the African culture, it's where you have to do a steam, like a vaginal steam over hog plum bush. Within a couple of days, you have to take castor oil on, I think it's day 6 or something.
Internally,
house, you know. Yeah, you actually drink the castor oil.
On day 6,
So the
cleansing or?
yes, some people say day 6, some say 9. So somewhere between day 6 and day 9. And what it's supposed to do is clean out all of the old blood.
Okay.
Whatever that means. So it is like a cleanse. Recently I had a client and she said, I just can't imagine. My mom told me that I have to take this castor oil. She said, but I just can't imagine. I'm bleeding, and she didn't even have stitches. She's like, I'm bleeding. I'm going to be, having griping. I have to be going to the toilet. She said, I just can't even imagine having to cope with that. Can I tell her that you said I shouldn't take it? So I said, well, you could tell her whatever pleases you, but if you don't want to take it, I don't think you should take it,
Yeah.
So she didn't, right? But the interesting thing is, then a couple of days later, she says to me, I'm still bleeding. I think it's because I didn't take the castor oil. So
Okay.
it's been in her head, right? So I said, well, no, and it's very light bleeding. So I said, well, that's normal, However, if you think you'd like to take the castor oil, then go right ahead. Because generally, I want to respect people's traditions.
Yeah.
And when they ask me what I think, I'll say, I don't think it's necessary. However, if your family believes that it is and you're comfortable with that, then go right ahead. Because it's not dangerous. I think not necessary, but not dangerous. That same client, she just before she gave birth, she ran into the shower and all of this. And afterwards she said, whew, because that's the last shower I can have until after the next day. So she's not allowed to bathe. She just has to use a washcloth or something. So she can bathe and the baby can bathe for 9 days, right? Because their pores are open. 9 days, yeah.
But also, I wonder if that is good for the bacterial flora for the baby's gut, just to if you don't bathe, I guess the vaginal canal potentially, I don't know, maybe that doesn't make sense, but
yeah, no, I mean, and the thing is, that's why I want to respect those traditions, because I think somewhere in there, there's a reason. We don't understand it, but also what I'll tell them is that I think a little bit of it was that many, many years ago, perhaps people didn't have running hot water.
Okay.
And so having a bath after you've given the baby given birth with cold water or something, may not be comfortable. So I think it's sort of linked, but I never disregard traditions, because as I said, many of them, I think somewhere in there is very good thinking, but I don't know, we've lost that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that makes sense, not doing it with cold water, because you don't want, after you have a baby, you're at least in Ayurvedic or Indian culture, you're in a cold, you're in a cold state. So you want to make sure everything's warm, nourishing foods, warm blankets, warm.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I think, so sometimes I'll tell people, well, it's because, I think it came about as because there was no hot and all that. So if you feel that you want to bathe, I think it's fine. And if you don't, that's fine too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's the castor oil, the not bathing, the baby, nobody must come into the house after 6 p.m. Once the baby is home, because then they bring night dew in, which I guess is, the dampness of it starting to get the cold again. And so they shouldn't come in to visit the baby, and the baby shouldn't go out. And then the one that I do have a little bit of a concern about, because I've seen it cause harm, is where they do a steam, where they put the leaves from the tree is called a hog plum tree. So they put the leaves in there. There's also other trees that they use, but that's the primary one. And they put it in really hot water. And then the woman stoops over it. She squats over it. And again, that's supposed to, you know, just help to clean out the birth canal.
Yeah.
Right. And the reason tell them to please be careful and only do it if the person really knows what they're doing is because I've seen it done where it's too hot and the woman has actually gotten burnt and came in and couldn't even close her legs because the whole area was really swollen, and you know, it healed well eventually, but it was just too hot.
Yeah.
So the steam burnt her. So I'll just say to them to be careful and make sure the person doing it knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
But again, I don't discuss, but those are the primary cultures and the primary thing, in the African culture. I think in both cultures, we have this thing of putting on a belly band.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which, you know, right after. Again, there's probably some validity in that, but the thinking behind it now is that it makes your stomach go back flatter, faster or something, you know. But there may be some validity in giving the organs and the abdomen support. However, I ask them not to wear it all the time, because I think, and this is just my personal thing, I believe if people wear it all the time, then they don't use their muscles. They don't use their abdominals, you know, because they have this support, right? All the time, because then you don't then tighten your core. And I think you have to work on getting your core back, even if it's unconsciously. So if you're going to move, you tighten, you know, it's a normal response, but you're not going to do that if you have this band, this really tight band all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I wore, after my first pregnancy, I wore this like really tight corset. I was young and somebody recommended it to me. And it was the worst thing I did. It was really bad for me. I feel like in terms of my strength of my core, it's still not, like, I feel like that after I did that, like it really compromised the strength of my core. And also the space that my organs had to just go back in place properly. Like, I feel like it squeezed in too much. And anyways,
right.
So I agree. But do you know what the or what kind of fabric, or if it has a special name, or if it's a certain type of material that they use for the belly bind?
I think it's just cotton. It's just cotton fabric that they'll use. And then the more modern version is like a support underwear. So like you said, like a corset, like a girdle type of thing. I think some people, for ease, have progressed to that. But traditionally, it's a cotton fabric that is just wrapped around.
Okay. And it does it, I know there's, in different cultures, they have different kinds of fabrics and they have names like faja and whatever, and they're all, you know, colorful, or, you know, it might be in the African tradition, they might have specific, like, I don't know, cloths, whether it be, who knows?
I mean, I don't know. I think here what they use is mostly a brown cotton fabric, which is just it's like an unbleached cotton fabric, but that just because it's the cheapest and it's cotton. I don't know of a particular.
Where could they get that? Is that just something that they?
Any of the fabric stores have it.
Any fabrics?
Yeah. Any of the fabric. For recently, that same person with the castor, she had almost like a band, you know, like a band from a dress or something. And so it wasn't as wide as what I've been familiar with before. It was just a very narrow piece of fabric that was really wrapped tightly around her lower abdomen to support it. So when I saw her for her 1 week visit, She said, do you want me to take this off? And I said, absolutely not. It's not going to interfere with what I'm checking for. She said, but it's so tight. I really want to take it off. And her mom had told her, well, it was her mother-in-law that was the person. She said her mother-in-law had told her at that point it was okay to take it off if she wanted to. But it's like she waited until she came here, you know, and then I suppose she'll say she took it off for the exam or something. So there is that conflict of the younger generation, maybe not fully buying into it, but she's in the household with her and she has a lot of respect for her. And so she's doing it. So what I usually tell them, as is it, if it's not harmful, and it's necessary to keep the peace, then just do it.
The lower abdomen, what's really interesting is wrapping that thinner fabric really tight on the lower abdomen is, I know, something that they do in Mexico, and they use a thinner, more sturdy fabric called a faja, and that's actually supposed to help with your hips and your sacrum and supporting your hips to come back together. So it sounds like that's what the thinking behind it is, as opposed to wrapping the organs and the belly. It's more about the bones. Yeah.
Right. And I know, because we had a midwife that was with us at one point who had done some training in Mexico where she does the postpartum wrap, but that she doesn't do that, I think, until after 6 weeks.
Right. Is it called closing of the bones?
Closing. Yes. Closing of the bones. Yeah.
Right. But there's nothing in Trinidad that you know of that is similar to that, is there?
No, there in the East Indian culture, there is, you do go to, they don't call it closing of the bones, but you go to rub your uterus back into place. So it's like an abdominal massage kind of lower back, pelvis sort of thing, which I think is probably the same principle, but it's not called, you know, it's called, they just say she's going to rub up her uterus or something like similar. And that's in the East Indian culture.
Right. And I was doing some research and I found one research paper by this man in Florida, I guess. I mean, he's Trinidadian, but he studied in Florida and he did it on postpartum traditions. And it was back in the day. I can't remember exactly when, but it was a while ago. And he was talking about in the East Indian community how they do have the masseuse. And I guess there was a traditional name for that. I forgot what that name was, but their main purpose of supporting the mother was, to massage and rub up and whatever the woman. Yes. And I know that in India, they have, you know, the 42 days, the sacred window, and they do the Abhyanga massage every single day, which is the hot oil massage or the warm oil massage every single day. Do you know of anybody who in Trinidad who gets rubbed up every single day for 40 days, or is it just a one-time thing?
No, I think it's just a one-time thing. And they do the baby and the mom.
Oh, okay. And is
right,
that
the baby is a head to toe. It's a head to toe oil massage that they do. They do very, very thoroughly at some point. I'm not sure when. And then some families will sort of massage the baby with oil every day, but that's, you know, after a bath or something, they oil them down from head to toe. But that's the baby. But the mom, I don't think, I've never heard of it daily. It's just as far as, well, there's one client in particular that was really very committed to it. It was one pretty soon after the birth and one later on.
Okay, one after birth and then another.
Yeah, generally I only know of them doing it once. And it's usually like after the 6-week visit. But right. You know, I also think a lot of those things are because you had traditionally, long ago, there was this period after you gave birth where everyone really took care of you and you did nothing, and you kind of stayed in bed and rested, and you were fed and maybe massaged and all that. And I think we've lost that. And I mean, I'm not saying that it's necessary to be massaged every day and all that, but I absolutely think it's necessary to be cared for.
Yeah.
For a period after. And I think we don't have that a lot. And I really spend a lot of time with our clients talking to them about figuring out how to get help for that period. Because too many times they feel like they can bounce back.
Yeah.
And maybe they can, but I think it takes a toll and it's at a cost. You know, and it's really important to have that period after to just be able to be in bed and get your milk flow established and recover from the pregnancy and the labor and the birth, and eat well and sleep when the baby's asleep because the baby's up in the night, and you know, that sort of thing. And I feel like we've lost that sort of sacred period in the postpartum that maybe a lot of those things fed into.
Definitely. And so where do people get their support? Do they hire help? Are they able to, you know, do they have to go back to work after 3 months? I'm sure a lot of them do. So what is it like? Like, do they just have their extended family that does help?
Most times, but you know, it's also often something that we really have to talk about and stress, because if you just say, so have you thought about, you know, postpartum and the fact that you'll have to rest, and we have help, my mom will help it. I said, no, but you need to be very clear about what that help looks like, because some people think help is coming to help with the baby. But you don't need help with the baby. The baby sleeps and eats, right? You need help with food and laundry and cleaning. Right. So we really go through in detail what the help should look like. And then we ask them to identify a couple of people that they can be confident will help. So your mom coming over to hold the baby and bathe the baby, no, that's not help.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I tell them the most important thing is food, because the laundry can wait for a day and the cleaning maybe could wait for a day. All those things maybe could wait for a day, but the food has to be regular, good food on time, you know. So we put focus on the food and having people in place who will commit to bringing food, or you know, or if people feel like there's nobody they can ask, then we suggest that they cook and freeze food.
Right.
So all they have to do is heat up. But most people can identify, I mean, and with most people it's a family member, but sometimes it is people from the church that they belong to. One person, it was the neighbor. Some people do hire help, so they have paid help. Some people will make arrangements for a caterer to cook and drop food every day. So it varies, but I would say by far the majority is relatives and friends.
And so I just really quickly going back to the massage thing for a second. What type of oil do they use? Do you know? Is it a specific?
It's mostly freshly made coconut oil.
Okay, nice. And
so that's a part of the ritual where you find somebody who still makes coconut oil, because that's not as common as it used to be. So they'll find somebody, you know, a relative or somebody out in the rural area who still makes it, and they'll get some, and that's like a big thing for the baby, for them to get that, you know, for pregnant, postpartum.
Right.
And that's used for the baby and for the mom.
Yeah, in the African culture, do they also have like a massage with coconut oil, or not that you know of?
No, not that I know of, really.
Okay. All right, and then so with food, That's another very important subject for postpartum moms. What types of food do people generally eat? Are there specific types of food that are cooked for the mother for health and helping to nourish and restore her, or is it like, I don't know, what are the thoughts around food? Is there any specific traditions of what types of food that the mothers can get?
No, the only one that I know of is in the Eastern End community, where they give you milk with turmeric.
Golden milk. Okay.
Yes, that's the only food that I know of that's specific. Other than that, no, there isn't anything in particular that I'm aware of. I mean, a lot of people will say they'll make soups, nourishing soups, but I can't say that is a tradition. I think it's just that they think of it as something that's easy to digest,
Yeah. Okay. And do you have any recipes that you recommend for postpartum mothers, or that? No,
not really. I just tell them that it should be balanced meals and regular meals, not any fast food and junk food. And generally we advise them to monitor their dairy intake, because we've found a lot of babies have dairy allergies. If they do excess, if it's in moderation, usually it's okay, but excess will be like they have cereal milk, and then they have a cheese sandwich, and then they have baked macaroni with cheese, and then so sometimes the diet just has such a lot of dairy in it that it's too much for the baby's gut. And the babies get really gassy. So we'll tell them just to watch that. But I don't tell them to stop it. I tell them, be aware of it. And if there's a day that the baby's really gassy, then think back to what they ate. And eventually they will see the pattern of what's affecting the babies. But I do warn them about the dairy, because I don't know, as a culture, I think we just eat a lot of cheese, eggs and milk and
yeah. But traditionally in the food, there isn't that much of it. If you think about traditional foods,
No, not that I'm aware of at all. Maybe we did, but I don't know of it at all. And we have women who absolutely don't want anything cold and to drink, because we'll offer them, at least a drink right after, until they feel like they can have something to eat. And some people don't want anything cold, and some only want cold. So it really varies.
Yeah.
Because I know in some, like in our Chinese community, because we have in the Chinese community, they will only have warm foods.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they will not have anything else but warm foods. But I don't see that in the other cultures as a rule.
Okay. So next question is, let me see what's it. Okay. Do you have yeah.
Sorry, there's one when we talked about the belly wrap, they also do a belly wrap for the baby. I don't know. Do you want to know about things that they do for the baby?
Sure. Yeah. That's interesting. I never heard of it.
Yeah. So there's also a strip of fabric. They call it a belly band that they put around the baby's abdomen, and the thinking is that it makes sure that their navel goes in, and that they have an innie, not an outie.
Okay.
And some of them, that same castor oil person, she said her mother-in-law does it where she puts a coin, like wraps a coin somehow, and then ties the coin on top of the navel to make sure that it goes in.
The sacred window is an idea that we can all find ourselves in need of during times of our lives where we are tender, in need of extra care, and transforming our understanding of self. The concepts of care we give to new parents can be applied to ourselves in honor of ourselves to build resilience and grace in how we navigate this life.
This is more of a general question, I guess, but is there any, you kind of already talked on it, but I'm just saying, is there anything else you want to add about it in terms of specific advice that you would give mothers regarding the postpartum period? I know you already talked about a lot of things, so I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, most of my time is spent on making sure that they understand that they really need to rest and take care of themselves. So usually what I tell them is they come back to see us in a week. So I said I'll tell them until they come back in 1 week that I don't want them doing anything else but caring for themselves and caring for the baby. And the rest of the time, I want them off their feet, preferably lying down, but at the very least lounging. Because I think it's really important for that. It's like a bonding period, and that breastfeeding adjustment when the baby feels like the baby is feeding all the time and you're up a lot. And I feel like you really need that week to start your recovery well. And then maybe you can add a little bit more, and I'll try to get them to do that for a longer period, but I really, really push it for that first week.
Right.
And then I'll tell the dad that I don't want him doing everything, because I want him to get into bed with them too.
Yeah.
I want him. Yes, I want him to be with them and get to know his baby too and all of that. So that's when I'll say, can you arrange for food? So that the most he has to do is maybe make breakfast or something, which is a quick thing, So I really try to stress how important that period is for all of them, to be together, bonding and resting, and not, being busy doing other things. So I ask him about, will he be able to take time off, and, how will he plan that? And then I'll jokingly say, can you cook? And, in the Caribbean culture, about 2/3 will say no. And 1/3 will say, or maybe a little bit more than that, but a lot of them.
Okay.
A lot of the men cannot cook. A lot of males cannot cook in the Caribbean.
Well, definitely not as good as the women, that's for sure.
No. And so if they say, yes, I can cook, I say, well, that's great. However, I don't want you cooking,
Yeah.
And if they say, no, I can't cook, I say, great. So let's figure out how to get food.
More time with the baby.
Yeah. So that's really what I spend a lot of time on, and of course with the breastfeeding, but I try to make them really understand the importance of that initial postpartum period. And the rest and eating well and drinking lots of fluids and all those types of things we spend a lot of time with, because people just really think that you can get up and move along like you did before. And we have, well, as you said, we only have a 3-month maternity leave policy. So that is one of the great things that COVID has done, because a lot of women are working from home. And because they're working from home, they're home with their babies, even though they're working, So it's been great. I find people have been able to breastfeed longer without, because a lot of them, when they go back to work, pumping and storing is a commitment. And so many people, once they go back out to work, they'll go to mixed feeding. So they breastfeed when they're at home, and then they give formula when they're at work and they're not at home. But now, because they're home, they're able to just continue the exclusive breastfeeding, which I think is a great thing. So COVID, has had some positives.
For sure. And with the rest, I know, at least in the States, when you talk to women, it's really hard to get them to understand that fact, especially in our capitalist society where it's like, go, 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 be productive. And so I assume that it's similar in Trinidad, but probably not as hard as in the States. But how do you get women who might be a little bit hard to convince with that? Like, what do you tell them to get them to understand the importance of it? Is there anything you just, or do they just listen to you because you're the midwife? Probably.
Well, the nature of the clientele that we would attract, is people that are more likely to listen, but for sure we have some type A's. And so I'll tell them that I'll use stories, actual stories, and I'll tell them that people have ended up back in the hospital because they did too much, and that they could start bleeding heavily again, that they could get infections, that it could affect their milk supply. Like I'll borderline give them little scare stories. But
it's true though. Yeah.
Yes, but it's true stories. I'm not going to tell them, well, you might drop down and die. I don't want to scare them, but I want it to be real. Because I really want them to understand. I mean, there was one person not too long ago, and she was like, no, it's okay. I'll tell them, like, I'll just respond to emails. And I said, no, like, you absolutely cannot do that. I said, okay, fine. You know what? If you end up in the hospital, then they will have to figure out how to work without you. I said, so is that what you're looking for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was really an outlier. I mean, I usually don't have to be that harsh for them to get it, but she was really, she was not getting it at all. She's like, no, I'm HR. I said, forgive me, but there's nothing in HR that could be such an emergency that you can't spend time with your baby for a week and not answer emails. I said, I'm really sorry. No.
Yeah.
And she wasn't, she cried a little bit, because it was not my normal thing. And I think she realized, wow, this is serious, right? But you know what? By her next visit, she had worked out a plan where she had gotten someone to cover for her. And she had agreed that she would take calls for one day after she went on leave, and then no more calls until her maternity leave ended. So I thought, okay, I was a little harsh, but it worked.
It worked. Maybe she needed that, so.
And I apologized to her. I said, I'm really sorry about the way I was at your last visit. I said, but I had to get you to understand. And she said, I understand, and it's what I needed. Like, you had to do that. Otherwise, I would not have listened to you.
Right. And, in Chinese medicine, or, Chinese culture, they believe that the postpartum, how you rest and recover and are taken care of and nourished during the postpartum period directly correlates with how you will experience menopause. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, that is like a very, very important idea from Chinese medicine that I feel like is, it makes a lot of sense. I want to know more about it, but it's interesting to talk to. I know that there are Chinese, there is a Chinese community in Trinidad, so to see their thoughts about that, it would be interesting. So also, okay, so how about superstitions? Are there any specific superstitions? I'm sure there's a lot of superstitions, but what are there any that you can think of that are particularly related to postpartum period?
I think most of them are in pregnancy, but postpartum, it's, putting like a piece of blue, or I think a garlic peg, or a little bag with herbs or something, and putting it on the baby. To keep away an evil eye. And in Christianity, it's done as well, right? Because they put on a St. Christopher medal or a cross. So to me, it's just a variation of the theme.
Right.
But the intent is all the same. But there are different things that they put on. Most often, I think it's a piece of blue, like blue, the color blue, but it's but there's a blue, gosh, it's something that they use when they wash white clothing. It's called blue, maybe it's blue something, I don't know, but they put it in the water at the end and it brightens the white. Anyway, so that's what's used quite a lot, but I think it's just because it's blue and it's like a little block of chalk.
Okay.
And so that will go into a thing, or there's something called asafoetida. I think that's an East Indian thing.
East Indian, yeah.
Right, and it must be in a little red sack. So I think the sack has to be red.
Okay.
And then it's pinned on the baby, and it's for protection, for protection from the evil eye. And I think that the ritual of the oiling down.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. You asked me about superstition. So that's not the oiling down. I was going to say part of that is that, you have to like pull their nose up so their nose will be nice and straight.
The baby? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Like it's a massage, but it's a massage to straighten out their legs so their legs are not bent. They don't get bow legs and
okay.
You pull up the nose when you massage so they don't have a flat broad nose like a traditional African face. Yeah. You massage it and pull it up so it gets pointy and straight, so they have a straight nose. And you massage the head so they have a nice round head. So but I tell people, I said touch is nice for the baby, so that's fine. But yeah, but I don't know if that would qualify as superstition. I think the superstition is more that I think some people, rather than pinning it on the baby, will put some under the soles of their feet. But the intent is all the same, which is some sort of protection.
Right.
The only other thing is what I mentioned about the Jew and the baby not coming out of the house at night, when like the spirits are roaming, sort of thing. But yeah, those are the only ones I know of for the babies, really.
Okay, and then
one other thing too is that they put hats on babies all the time because the soft spot at the top of the head, they think it needs protecting. So you put a cover over it so that nothing, can get in. Again, sort of protection.
Right. I was reading again in that one paper, like that I was reading online. They were saying that actually the superstition was that women were, after they had the babies, they were actually I don't know if it was that they were dirty or like some kind of like not very nice thing, the reason for them having to rest, and like or it was like that they could bring in evil spirits. I can't remember, I have to look it up, but anyways, I thought that was very very patriarchal or very sexist, you know what I mean? But
I suppose it goes along with that whole philosophy about when you're menstruating you're dirty.
Yeah, it's kind of sad though, because it is good to rest, and so it's like what they're asking the mothers to do is really helpful for them, right? But it's unfortunate that they're putting this reason on top of it that is totally not like not very nice for the mothers. But obviously it's not any longer, that's not the belief any longer, so
right
yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so are there any natural bush remedies for postpartum mothers? I think you mentioned one of them, but specifically for if there's any issues that may arise, anything that you might use actually for any mothers, if anything comes up, any specific plants or to maybe increase milk supply or whatever traditional herb remedies you can think of.
The most common and still very, very popular is something called vervine, which is used for milk production. The only reason that it's not used as often as it was is because there just isn't as much of it around. like it's sort of, I think it might even grow wild. So some people always had it somewhere in their gardens, but not as much anymore because all the gardens now are very manicured. Well, not all, but a lot are very manicured, and so they don't have it. So you have to actually find somebody who has some in the yard. But almost everyone is very aware of that. Vervine. So after you have the baby, you drink vervine, which helps with the milk production.
So as a tea with warm water?
As a tea. So you steep the leaves and drink the tea. And it does work. It does work. So we recommend, fenugreek or fennel or something, because that you could just buy that in the store rather than sending them hunting for vervine. But if they have access to vervine, it does work.
Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a lot of vervine here in Hawaii, like everywhere. It's
okay.
Really works. That's awesome. And how about any spices or any, well, you just said fenugreek and fennel, so that's good.
Yeah. For postpartum, let me see. Not really. I mean, it's a lot of it is in pregnancy. You shouldn't eat a lot of pepper because then the baby will be born without eyebrows. If you have a lot of heartburn, it's because the baby has a lot of hair. So most of those things are in pregnancy, but afterwards, there is some caution about having spicy foods like curry and really peppery foods, but that's more to do with the fact that it will affect the baby through the breastfeeding.
Okay. And let's see, any folk tales related to postpartum that you know of? It's okay if the answer is no. I just
I know, but I'm just thinking. Not really, not any common ones anymore. I mean, I remember a mother-in-law telling me that they would have to get newspaper and block up, like they had to shut all light out of the house. No light could even come in the house for this 9-day period. So if there was a little crack in the window, she'd have to stuff it with newspaper,
Wow, okay.
Yes, no light at all should come in for the 9 days. But again, I think that was just that bonding period, but in a different language,
Yeah.
It was like dark in bed, don't do anything, don't bathe the baby, just be in bed, we'll feed you, and all you have to do is turn over and feed the baby and wash up. You don't even get so I think many of those things started and then evolved into something that isn't what it was. But no, I can't think of any folk tales that are currently still practiced or talked about.
Yeah, but in relation to what you just said about the no light, it kind of makes me think about how the baby just came from this darkness inside of the womb for 9 months, and if you think that the last period of gestation is when they're outside of the womb, it's kind of the transition period for the baby, from the darkness into I guess, so kind of nice.
And that's why a lot of those things like that, not bathing and all that, if we could go back to some semblance of that, I think I wouldn't mind at all, because I really have to stress so much to too many women how much they need to rest after,
right?
And how they need to just feed their babies, and every time the baby's asleep they should lie down. And I mean I just have to stress that so much. So much. And then sometimes we have occasionally somebody who really still doesn't listen, and then by day 3 or day 4 she's calling me because she's crying crying all the time, and she feels tired and she can't do this, and the breastfeeding, and then the baby's crying, and it's just it starts that vicious cycle.
Right.
And I just keep repeating, you have to get into bed. Okay, just get into bed and do. Yes, but no, there's no but, just do it.
Yeah.
So I almost wouldn't even mind if we went back to
Yeah.
to that.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And so, and that crack in the window superstition, is that from East Indian or African tradition?
African.
Okay.
Well, actually, wait, I think African. I was just querying because I think one grandparent was East Indian, but I think it was from the African side.
Okay. Yeah. Because I know you're mixed up, so I wasn't sure. But
well, girl, and Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, I know. You have everything.
Oh, yes. Yeah, but I do think that was African.
Okay. I was going to ask about postpartum depression. Do you see that? Do you see that often? I mean, probably not as much with the clients that you work with, but in general, in all of Trinidad, would you say that's maybe a concerning issue that's arising with postpartum mothers? Or
I think it's concerning only because I'm very conscious of it, but I don't think it's that common. My concern stems from the fact that I think that it may not be recognized, and then even if it's seen, it's not acknowledged. It's like, but you should be happy, you just had a baby, and you should, like, come on, snap out of it, But we also have a bigger problem with any sort of mental health challenges, as a society. So I think that's like lumped in there. But I don't think it's a huge problem. If we have a client that has any history either of depression or postpartum depression with previous babies, then we recommend stuff. We recommend evening primrose oil, or we recommend that they have placenta encapsulation, or we recommend that they see a practitioner based on what they want, because there's some people who will go to a regular doctor and figure out what medication they could take, but most of our clientele would want a more naturopathic or natural solution. So we sent them to get homeopathic stuff to take after, or something, but if they don't want to do that, the easy thing is evening primrose or placenta encapsulation, because we do have some clients who will identify a history. So I think just not recognized and then not addressed, but not a huge problem, really.
Okay. Yeah. And then also, you guys do have people who do placenta encapsulation there.
We do, yeah.
Doulas
Yes, we have doulas. Mamatoto trained the first set of doulas. We brought people down from DONA, the Doula Organization of North America, to do the training.
Right.
And then eventually the doulas that were trained set up an alliance, Doula Alliance of Trinidad and Tobago, who I referred you to. So they now have a separate organization, and they have, for I think 2 years or so, maybe, they did the training on their own locally. But they've now gone back to using DONA again, because when you use DONA, it gives the trainees the option of being certified internationally through DONA or locally through the Doula Alliance. So it gives them an option. So they were supposed to do training last year. Somebody was supposed to come down, but of course that didn't happen. So the training is now all online. Okay, but we do have several doulas.
That's for placenta encapsulation training, or just the doula?
Oh no, sorry.
Oh,
the doula,
okay.
Just
got
sorry.
it.
No, the doula training. And the doulas work in most of the private hospitals, and we have 2 of our public hospitals that sent some of their staff to be trained as doulas. And the part that would be of interest to you, because your focus is postpartum, is the Doula Alliance did do postpartum doula training, because we identified it as an area where people really need support that they're not getting, right? So they did postpartum doula training, and it has been hugely popular, where women will hire them to go, just to be there for maybe 2 hours or so a day, just so that they know somebody's coming who could, all of the doulas would have some level of breastfeeding training. So if they need some support with the breastfeeding, or maybe just to confirm, yes, you're doing a great job, it's perfect, that's normal, it's okay, that type of thing. So the postpartum doulas are quite popular.
Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah.
But again, that is for the women who can afford it, right? Because it's at a cost. But what the other thing I was going to say is that 2 of the public hospitals train some of their staff to be doulas, and the plan is eventually for them to be able to function as doulas within the hospital. They don't currently, because they were nursing assistants. So they still have to work as nursing assistants, because there isn't a category of staff called doulas. So they're working as nursing assistants, and if they're able to, they'll be supporting a woman as a doula. So they're doing both. Yeah.
Well,
so 2 of the hospitals. So that was really nice.
That is, because that's more than what they do here in the States, that's for sure. So I'm really happy to hear that. Now with COVID, they don't even let anybody come into the hospital,
Right.
except maybe your partner, or they have one person can come in as support. But if the hospital staff was trained as a doula, that would be amazing. Yeah. Really cool. So okay, so I asked if there were any concerning trends other than postpartum depression. Is there anything else that you're seeing with postpartum mothers in their recovery, or is there any positive trends that you see? So I think you just talked about something that was positive for sure with the training doulas, but and also the fact that the postpartum doulas are very popular, or starting to be kind of popular. Is there anything else you could think of in postpartum trends, either negative or positive things that you might be able to identify?
No, I think our breastfeeding rates nationally have gone up since the thrust towards the baby-friendly hospitals. There's a little bit more emphasis on supporting the women in the hospital and giving them information. There's a lapse once they're discharged from the hospital, but I feel as if there is a little bit more education and support. So when they only have the data for when they're discharged, what number are exclusively breastfeeding, and those numbers have gone up. So I think that's, a very positive trend. We'd have to get the hospitals to collect data for a little bit longer, like up to, 6 months or something. But what they have so far looks good. What else? I don't think so. We have we meaning like the Midwives Association and some other groups have sort of lobbied a little bit for paternity leave, because most places don't give anything. Some places will give 2 days or something. But generally the dad has to apply for vacation. But how do you plan vacation? You don't know when the baby's going to be born. So you either off from before but companies are, I think, becoming more and more supportive. So I think that's a very positive trend, where the father would say, okay, the baby is due around this date. and they will agree that when the baby is actually born, then they start their leave. So they'll continue to work until the baby is actually born, rather than being made to go off on leave, you know, which I think is a good thing, because then they're able to be home after the baby is here. But it's vacation time. You know, they're really, paternity leave is very poor. Non-existent in many places and really poor in others.
Yeah.
And if you're not, some companies, if you're not married, if the couple is not married, then they can't get the paternity leave.
Wait, sorry, say that one more time. If the couple is not married?
If the mother and the father of the baby are not married, then the father cannot get paternity leave with some companies.
That's really sad. Oh no.
It's very sad, like, because you're not married, you know, they, I mean,
punish you, like, oh my goodness. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Oh, one more thing I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, sure.
Do they train midwives in Trinidad?
They do. There are 2 schools currently, but one is post-nursing midwifery training only, and the other one is post-nursing and direct entry midwifery. They're both just certificate one is a baccalaureate program, so you get your bachelor's and the midwifery certificate, and the other one, and that's COSTAT. And then the other one, which is through the Ministry of Education, is only a certificate program, and that's run out of the 2 major hospitals, so one in Port of Spain and one in San Fernando. And we hope to have coming on stream in September of this year a 3rd program, which will also be a baccalaureate. It will be a direct entry baccalaureate, and that will be through University of the West Indies, UE. So the standards will be much higher.
Okay.
For example, so the curriculum will really be, you know, competency based and all that, and they're just going to have better standards and so on, because the other one that's based at the 2 hospitals should be closed down. It's really, I mean, they really don't do a good job. You know, they don't have instructors. In one of them, the woman who is the director of the school is not even a midwife. How can you be director and teaching midwifery when you're not even a midwife? You know, so what are you teaching?
Do you take apprentices?
We actually do, but you know what's really sad about it is that we have midwifery students coming to us from all over the world. Germany, well, mostly the US, Canada, but we have from as far as Germany. But our local midwifery students can only visit us because their program is so tight, and they do not have an opportunity for any external experience. So all of their experience is based within the hospital system, except for the 3 home births that they do. So they come and visit, and we do sessions with them, you know, to expose them to this model. But, you know, some of them have asked, well, can they do like a short internship with us and some of their births here? And we're not approved for that. They're only approved for within the hospital setting or the 3 home births. But even those 3 home births, it's 3 clients from the hospital. You know, from within that system then that they've gotten at the health center or something. So it's quite sad. That's a long answer, but it's sad that we don't have, we can't really have, and we have students coming from, they can come for as short as they like, but a lot of them come for like a 3-month internship or so.
And yeah, that's important. I feel like to educate the local midwives to do this work.
So they're all aware of us, and they do, well, we used to do in-person sessions where they'd come and spend time here, but as a group, like the whole group would come, and we show them the place, and we talk to them about our model, and we show them a video of a water birth, because we're the only place, you know, that does water births. We're actually the only place in the Caribbean right now, English speaking Caribbean, that offers water births. So we show them all those things. We talk about our support groups, because we, you know, that we have for dads and moms and all of that. So it's all wonderful, but then they don't actually get to have, like, I would love if they could even just experience a day with us doing visits and see how visits can be done respectfully but still efficient. You know, it's just such a different approach that I would love to expose them to, but we'll see, maybe with time. You know, I never give up, like baby steps.
Yeah. And do you think that program at UE would give the students more time to maybe do something like
yes, I think once they get settled, because I was actually on the committee that helped to develop the curriculum, and for sure I think that they would be open to giving the students an opportunity for some sort of external internship, you know. But those other schools, you know, I think the other programs are focused on getting them in and out. So there's no semester where they say, okay, well, this semester, you know, like those international programs have a semester for an optional international placement.
Right.
Yeah, but they don't at all here.
Well, that might change. You should definitely bring that. I think you should, since you're on the committee, you should just really push for, I mean, that's if you wanted to. That's more work.
No, he knows. The director knows. He's like, so can our students come in? And I said, with open arms, I would welcome them.
Awesome. Amazing. Okay.
That's sure. So nice. But, you know, I guess they'll have to work out the curriculum, because we wrote it, but then it went for all these approvals, and who knows what they're going to do in terms of the electives, right? Because they're getting a degree, you know, they're going to have those electives that they're going to have to do. So, but we'll see. But yes, if it's going to happen, that would be the program that would do it.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to look out for that program and see. I hope it comes to be. And yeah, that sounds exciting. But yeah. So, Debrah, it was so nice talking with you, and thank you so much for sharing.
How can you bring something sacred to your current window of time? What do you have to offer to someone within their sacred window? We honor you for all you give and for who you are. Thank you for listening. The Sacred Window podcast is brought to you by the Center for Sacred Window Studies. You can visit us to find out more about our online training and mentoring programs, plus resources and products for and about the sacred postpartum window at www.sacredwindowstudies.com. Editing of our podcast recordings is done by Sienna Butler, and our music is written and performed by Sarah Emmett. You can hear more of Sarah's music by visiting www.sarahemmett.bandcamp.com.